Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Maxine Mingo, the warden of the Anna M. Kross Center, known as AMKC. We are the largest facility in this department. As warden, my priority when I come to work every day is to keep my officers safe. You know, our officers' job is extremely tough. They are responsible to patrol what is called New York's toughest precincts. In my 19 years with the department, I've never seen the amount of change that has happened in the last 2 years. This change has brought positive results, and the staff feels safer. For example, our very first restarted housing area has reached 114 days without any incidents. Another high classification area housing some of our most challenging inmates has gone 93 days without any incidents. That means no use of force, no assaults on staff, no fights, and no other acts of violence. Overall staff injuries in this facility are down 66%. Use of force with serious injuries are down 75%. Slashings and stabbings are down 35%. We are up for the challenge and committed to reducing the violence in this facility. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce to you the Chief of the Department, Martin J. Murphy.
Thank you, Warden Mingo. Good afternoon, all. Mayor de Blasio, Commissioner Pont, uniformed members of the and civilian members of service. Mr. Mayor, I speak on behalf of all of us when I say it's an immense honor for you to be here today. With this honor comes a unique sense of appreciation we feel as you continue to show your support, your unending support to this agency. Your support for our commissioner and the 14-point reform agenda is unprecedented. And we thank you for all that you and your administration have done for our agency. In fact, in my 29 years of service, I'd be hard-pressed to recall any other administration given the amount of time and resources that you have devoted to the New York City Department of Corrections. So I truly thank you. And as you can see by what Warden Mingo has mentioned with the statistics here at AMKC, we are showing the fruits of our labor, and what it is that you have committed to us. And also here, not here at AMKC, we have Warden Winley here from GRVC where we taught earlier. And just to give a quick example of GRVC, we have a unit there that we have done restarts, and we've gone about 218 days in a housing unit there where we've had 0 incidents as well. So it is working. We've done a lot. We have a lot more to go, but we are seeing pockets of change, and that's a great sign. So with your continued support, we will work tirelessly to accomplish all the goals that you and Commissioner Pont have set out before us. So again, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Right, thank you.
Chief Murphy, I want to thank you for your leadership. 29 years of service to people in New York City. Thank you. And you certainly are one of the people I have turned to for the history and to learn what we can from that history and the things we have to change to make better. So thank you very much for your leadership. And the chief mentioned, I want to say this up front, he mentioned what he and the leaders under his command, and most especially the men and women who work on Rikers Island, the officers, what they have achieved. And I asked Chief Murphy if he could think of any time in those 29 years where these kind of specific achievements ever occurred before, and he said he had no parallel he could name. I want to restate what he just told us. He mentioned in the case of Warden Mingo and her command, AMKC, that 2 units that have seen extraordinary progress, long periods without any incident whatsoever. And one of them 118 days without a single incident. Again, that means a fight, an assault, a use of force, anything. 118 days. And Warden Mingo, I want you to know that's an extraordinary achievement. And I want to thank you for that. And the other facility that I toured GRVC with the leadership of Warden Windley. One of her units at GRVC has gone 214 days without a single incident. So again, these are numbers never before seen in the history of Rikers Island. And I really want to commend the leadership of these two wardens and the way they're inspiring their staff to make a difference. I say that these are two women who really make me proud of what people in this agency are doing. And they are blazing new trails. This is tough, tough work. I want to emphasize that. One of the things that becomes very clear whenever you spend time with corrections officers is it's tough work. And I want to thank all of the officers gathered here with us, because what do they do every day? They come into a situation where the job is to try and turn around human lives that have gone astray, and they have a lot working against them, including, as I've talked about very bluntly, decades of the wrong kind of history on this island and the wrong kind of culture and a lack of support, a lack of resources. But they still come here every day ready to take on the challenge. What's different now is after a lot of investment, there is evidence that the changes are starting to take hold. There's nothing I'm going to say to you today that is popping any champagne bottles or declaring any mission accomplished. We have so much more work to do. We're only talking about a beginning, but it's a beginning that we're very proud of because it's working. But it is really also a statement about the will of these men and women to overcome that bad history, to take on this extraordinary challenge, and show that change can happen. And there's lots of reasons to critique and question always, but these two facts, the unit has gone 118 days without an incident, the unit's gone 214 days without an incident, that really needs to be talked about in this city, because that proves that change can happen. Now, I went around today and had an opportunity to talk to a number of officers, some in passing, some in a roundtable where I really got to hear their concerns directly. And I told them, don't be shy, please be blunt, and I assure you they were. And there's real concerns. There's real concerns about officer safety and the needs of our officers that have to be addressed. There's a persistent concern about how much overtime we've had to use. And my message to the officers was, change is coming. It will take real hard work. It will take a lot of investment. Some of it will not happen overnight. But change is coming, and we will be resolute. And everything, literally everything I heard today, I believed was fair. And I believe that the officers were telling me things that I needed to hear and we needed to work on. I think we ended up, particularly at the end of the roundtable discussion, with a really clear consensus that what our officers are asking for are fair and important things, and in fact, the very same policies that we're trying to implement. Again, deep thank you to Warden Mingo and Warden Windley for their leadership. I also want to thank Warden Charlton Lemon of GMDC and our First Deputy Commissioner, Dina Simon. I want to thank them all. They've all been a big part of making the changes. Now, part of why I'm here is to make very physical a fact that I think has been visible for a while. Department of Correction is a priority for this administration. I don't think that was always true in the past, as Chief Murphy indicated, in terms of the history of the city. But it's a priority for us. And it's clear in our budget, and it's clear in the policy changes that we have made and will continue to make. There was a neglect, let's just say it plain. There was neglect not only of the inmates on Rikers Island, there was neglect of all the people who worked on Rikers Island. For years, in some cases, decades would be a more fair measure. We have to profoundly change that. But isn't it powerful to see that when you begin the process of change, you can get real, tangible results? I know many people, even just a year ago, would have told me that those two units going so many days without an incident was literally impossible. Well, they didn't understand the caliber of the people standing here around me. They didn't believe it was impossible. They actually managed to achieve it. So today we're going to talk about new changes we're making, new investments we're making. And there's one common theme to everything we're talking about today. We want to make Rikers Island safer. We want to protect our officers. We want it to be safe for everyone on Rikers Island. That's why we are making these changes and these investments. I said officers in a roundtable and along the way, and I spoke to officers at a couple of roll calls. And I said to them, maybe they'd feel that their work doesn't get a lot of public attention. But from my point of view, I see it for what it is. Difficult work, work that takes a lot of bravery, takes a lot of commitment, and work that this city needs. The people of this city need proud New Yorkers to choose to become corrections officers and choose to rise up through the ranks. We need that for the good of our city. We need that so we can turn around those who can be redeemed. That is why this work is so important. It takes real bravery. It is a very difficult job. And it should be talked about more, and it should be given its due more, and we intend to do that. Now, back in March, we announced a series of reforms to continue to change the culture of violence. I talked about some individual units, but let me give you the overall picture. The first 7 months of 2016, assaults on officers are down 20%, and serious assaults on officers are down 44% compared to the same period last year. That's good. That's a start. It's not enough. And so we're going to add 3 fundamental new tools to the equation that we think will address further the culture of violence and particularly enhance officer safety. First, our new scanners. The history, and I came to understand it through the many lessons that Commissioner Pont has taught me. You'll hear from him in just a moment, but I've spent a lot of time with Joe Pont, one of the nation's leading experts on corrections reform. And he's had to explain things to me that, honestly, I would not have had a clue about before I became mayor. How weapons came into facilities and contraband, the sheer detail and the sheer sophistication, if you will, of some of the efforts that people have undertaken to bring the wrong kinds of material into these facilities. And as I have asked time and again for Commissioner Pont to tell us the next thing and the next thing and the next thing that we needed to do, he has consistently said that scanners would be a big piece of the equation. And so, because we know that weapons, including homemade weapons and drugs, which become the source of violence because there are fights over those drugs, that they're so much at the core, and we know they come in from many sources, including visitors. We're going at that problem by adding new scanners. And they'll be like the ones you see at airports. They will allow much greater detection than what exists now with the metal detectors currently on Rikers. This will give the leadership of these facilities the ability to keep weapons out more consistently. It'll produce pictures that show not only metal objects, but non-metal objects that could be dangerous and contraband. This will be a major step forward. We want to go even farther than that. And there's a generation of scanners beyond that that we look forward to moving to in the future. But this step will immediately improve officer safety and the safety of the overall environment. Second, tasers. Tasers are going to be provided for the emergency services unit. This is the unit that's highly trained and equipped, prepared to intervene in the event of any kind of challenge or crisis, particularly to stop emerging violence. Tasers will be a crucial tool that the ESU officers can use to stop any trend towards violence. They've been proven to be very, very effective. And this month, we'll be equipping every ESU supervisor with tasers and deploying them to key points around Rikers. This will allow ESU members to act even more effectively and more quickly to quell any violence that emerges. Third, the increase in staffing. This is, of all the conversations that we've had previously, and certainly today, this is the thing I hear the most about from officers, the deep concerns about the level of overtime that they've had to engage in to keep this huge facility going. We have to fundamentally change the way we approach personnel, and we've said it from the beginning. A different approach to recruiting, a different approach to screening, a different approach to training, but also the sheer numbers to bring these facilities up to the kind of staffing levels they deserve so that our officers are not forced to do double shifts on such a regular basis. And I have said to officers today, help is on the way, and I've also told them it will not be tomorrow, that it will take, in the case of the first graduating class, into the fall, November, the one after that into the spring. But at the same time, a cause for hope is the sheer numbers that we're talking about here, and they are unprecedented. In November, a graduating class of approximately 700. In the spring, a graduating class of 1,200. 700 will already be the largest graduating class in the history of the Department of Corrections. We are then going to go much, much farther with the following class of 1,200. And that's officers. At the same time, last month, we graduated the largest class of captains ever in the history of the department, 117. Triple the average number of previous promotion classes. This is one of the most fundamental things we can do to enhance safety for everyone, particularly for our officers, and to relieve the burdens and stress they've gone through. That help is on the way, and we will keep building to make sure we have the personnel needed. This fits consistently with the overall reform agenda. And I want to thank Commissioner Pont because he has undertaken the most dramatic reform agenda of any correction department anywhere in the country and under some of the toughest conditions. But he's moved forward resolutely with the ending of punitive segregation for minors, the tripling of the number of security cameras all over the facilities of Rikers, and expanding education initiatives and treatment initiatives and a whole host of services to actually engage inmates in positive and constructive activity to prepare them to re-enter society and become productive citizens. All of this has had to happen simultaneously. And Commissioner Pont, I know it's never been an easy mission, but I want to thank you for continuing to make progress and continuing to fire on all cylinders for the changes that we make. Last time I was here, I made a pledge to our correction officers that we would support them. My message to correction officers was simple. We're going to invest in you. We're going to support you. We're going to provide the resources to change the reality of Rikers. We do not accept the status quo, and we will be resolute. We literally will not stop until this status quo is fundamentally changed. We've continued on that mission, and today we add to it, and we deepen that commitment, and we deepen those investments for the safety of all. A few words in Spanish. Estamos tomando nuevos pasos para que el personal de Rikers Island esté más seguro y sea más efectivo. Aumentamos el número de oficiales, los equipamos con pistolas eléctricas y instalamos escáneres que pueden detectar objetos no metálicos. Comenzamos una nueva era con menos violencia en Rikers y estos pasos harán la isla aún más segura. With that, I want to welcome Commissioner Pont and thank him for the extraordinary progress, and I look forward to much more. Commissioner.
Good afternoon and welcome. Really want to thank the mayor for his visit today. It does show staff who work very hard every day, the support that comes directly from City Hall. You know, we started here about 2.5 years ago, working on a plan to make changes in this agency. We had a lot of people at the table. We had a lot of discussions on what to do and how to do it, and we ended up with a 14-point plan. I think if anything, we probably had, you know, maybe 10 more points than we should have taken on in the beginning, but we did develop that plan, and every step of the way, that plan was complicated by things like the size of the training academy, are able to recruit quality staff, are able to train quality staff. So every step of the way, our initiatives presented other problems that our commanders came up and found solutions for. So my purpose today is to thank people like Warden Mingo, Warden Winley, who really stepped up some time ago when we talked about changing the culture here at Rikers Island. I'm sure neither one of these wardens understood exactly what it was we were talking about. So they kind of blindly took a step forward, knowing that what we currently did was not exactly right, but didn't have that vision to see, well, what is it we're developing? Both of them have stepped forward and really made that vision real, so you can go see it. You can look in these housing areas, you can see the improvement, you can talk to our staff who are now enthusiastic about their ability to manage inmates in their care. That was not the case 2.5 years ago. The most important people in this room, the most important people in any correctional organization are the officers that work day to day with inmates. You know, we can't do enough for them, we can't do enough to support them, we can't train them enough, and every initiative that we put forward has put more strain on that valuable resource. So if they were working 2 overtime shifts a week, now because of our initiatives, they're working 4 overtime shifts a week. But when you talk to them, as the mayor and I just did, they haven't quit, they haven't given up, they have some good ideas. They want to make this organization better. So for that, I'm committed to this reform because I know in my heart and I know in my correctional experience, the quality of our staff, the quality of the life of the inmates committed to our care only gets better by the quality of our staff, like the guys you see standing behind us. So I want to give those guys a round of applause. So I think we're going to take questions at this point. All right, man. Thank you.
Just want to remind our colleagues in the media, we're going to talk only about the question of Rikers and corrections today. Yes, sir.
What techniques will the tasers be displacing? In other words, what technique would you be using now that you won't be using in the future? A second, are the tasers going to be equipped with cameras, and who's going to control the custody of that footage and make sure that it's on?
Wait. Let's do them in 6 parts.
Okay.
Let's do the first one first.
Okay.
Start again with the first one more time.
Sure. What technique are tasers going to displace, or techniques?
So it's added to the equipment the officers already have. So they have chemical agent, they have batons, they have vests, they have helmets. So the taser will be an added piece of equipment used in certain types of circumstance. Well, smaller group numbers. So if you have a major disturbance, the taser is not effective. So a small group incident where inmates are very violent, out of control, we don't have to put hands on and wrestle them to the ground. The taser will quickly bring those situations under control with much less injury.
And the camera question?
Yes, so it's audio and video.
And who controls the custody of that?
After the taser's been used, we'll take custody of the video information.
And does the officer have the right to
Okay,
turn
that's
it on and
last
off?
one on this, and then we're going to get other people in. What, say it again?
Does the officer have control to turn it on?
The actual, once you turn the taser on, it automatically comes on. You cannot shut it off.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you give us some detail about what kinds of contraband make it in and how these new scanners will catch them where they couldn't before?
So a lot of the contraband that we see are weapons being smuggled in, which are hobby blades, sometimes metal, sometimes scalpels, sometimes chromatic blades, but also drugs, about any kind you could possibly put on your body. So these scanners will allow us to see objects under clothing much clearer than we ever could before.
The scanners, it was my understanding that you couldn't have the scanners because state law prohibited you. So if you're kind of getting around that, what is the difference between the scanner that you can't have and the scanner you're buying? And then I know you mentioned some stats about assaults on staff being down 44%, but what about slashings? I know that has been obviously a big problem.
I'll let the commissioner speak about the slashing issue. On the scanners, we realized that the state law did allow the kind of scanners that are used at airports. So what we realized, and this was a long process to put these pieces together, the ideal scanner requires authorization by state law. We will continue to work for that. But in the meantime, there was a middle ground. There was a third way that was very, very valuable, would really help, as the commissioner just described, to get at a lot of weapons and contraband that were being missed right now. And it was fully authorized under current state law. So we're taking a major step in the right direction. We'd like to go further thereafter on the slashings.
Those, again, the availability of weapons, the drugs inside our facility usually is a lead to violence. Also, as we've done these APUs units, we've seen advanced program units, which really we've seen the violence in those housing units go down as we've worked with incentives. Inmates can earn incentives through behavior. So even though it's the same inmate per se, their ability to live together and function together is much better. And we don't see the level of violence in those. So our hope would be get the weapons down, keep the weapons out, but at the same time, these units that we currently have in our current circumstance operate fairly well with very little violence.
Are the slashings actually down?
Up.
They're up. By how much? What are the stats?
I don't have that information.
We'll get that for you. Let's get that in a moment.
You cited, a list of positive statistics. There's been some allegations that the numbers are being manipulated, and you've listed, unreported multiple cases. Can you respond to some
Yeah,
of that?
I find when people do that, when we've acknowledged the extent of the problem now for 2.5 years, made massive investments and changes, and particularly, again, want to thank these two wardens and their teams who've achieved something extraordinary, and then there are people out there who put it down with no factual basis whatsoever. I find that very troubling. We are not just to finish, we're acknowledging a host of things that are still not good enough, but we should also have the capacity to recognize when something actually works, and these particular units are proving that the new model works.
Investigating any of these allegations? Allegations of stat manipulation? And I'm curious when you say there's no evidence.
I've seen, look, one, we'll always take seriously if there's a specific piece of information that's brought to our attention. I have seen no evidence is a factual statement. I have seen consistent reporting from the Correction Department that shows things that are working, things that aren't working, things where the plans are having the effect we want, things where we still have to do a lot more. I think it's been a very honest reporting throughout. But I find that some people who don't believe in the reforms like to try and undermine them by claiming there's something wrong with the statistics. I don't think there's anything wrong with the statistics.
Question about the tasers again. Was it required to get some sort of a buy-in from the federal monitor, or was there any consultation carried out with the federal monitor? And a second part to that, did you look at any other jurisdictions to see about the efficacy of using these tasers in jails and prisons around the
Let me do the first one, then go to you on the monitor. Yes, absolutely. We did some real detailed research on the efficacy, on health and safety issues, a whole host of things. The question you heard about earlier on the ability to do after-action reports on what happened and have real evidence for follow-up. I was involved in those conversations deeply and became convinced from the body of evidence of similar correction departments around the country that this was a very important move to make, and one that would...
Are there any particular departments that you looked at as kind of a prime example?
I'll get my colleagues to share with you which ones we looked at. There's some really obvious parallel cities. On the second point?
What was the second question?
On the monitor, and whether the monitor had to have some...
Yes, we actually sat down with the monitor. Me personally, we had a good discussion about the use of tasers, and we revised the policy slightly over some of the comments, and that policy's been changed, and the monitor is in agreement.
On the tasers again, so when will the ESU captains who are trained to carry them, when will they be carrying them? And sort of what's what's the best practice to ensure that those tasers remain in the hand of an officer as opposed to an inmate in the midst of a scuffle?
So it's weapon retention, like chemical agent. We sometimes have inmates take chemical agents from our staff. So it's the approach, it's knowing distances and providing the training to eliminate that situation from happening. These officers would never be deployed on their own. It would be a team going in.
Are they always carrying the tasers?
The captain in the unit will always be carrying the taser, yes.
Thank you. Ms. Mayor, there's already some criticism from reform advocates about the use of tasers. Your administration has been focused on de-escalating the use of violence, and they view these tasers as a weapon. So how do you defend that? And I have a follow-up on the contractor.
On the first point, look, I am a progressive, I am a humanitarian, but the notion that advocates would not want us to first create a safe environment, this makes no sense to me. If we don't have safety, nothing else is possible. And there is a culture of violence that goes back decades that has to be disrupted. And this is what I appreciate about, I'm glad Commissioner Pont did 14 points, as painful as it was to try and move them all simultaneously. This was an unacceptable status quo, in many ways remains an unacceptable status quo. So we're not going to get at it by repeating yesterday's approaches. That's why we needed scanners, that's why we need tasers. We need a whole lot of changes to get to safety, starting with officer safety. We can then do a lot of other things. But I'm sorry, this environment, when I heard the full extent of what for years had gotten in to these buildings because of, I would say bluntly, misguided policies that were too lenient and did not require of visitors much more careful checks and balances and limitations. I want people to have visitors if they're inmates, but first I want safety. And the same with the scanners. I respect everyone's concerns, but first I want safety. And the people who, everyone here deserves that, and particularly the officers who volunteer to do this work. What's your other question?
The other question was about the company that's been retained to do this training.
On the tasers, you mean?
Yes. There's been some criticism. The Department of Investigation is looking into the contract. Can you just speak to that? Some of the officers have said that they're being trained in practices that you're supposed to be moving away from, violent practices.
So that is just absolutely false, not true. We did retain a company. The gist of the training was to work in small groups. Traditionally, our ESU teams were deployed a captain and 10 officers. In this new design, to be deployed with a captain and 4 officers. So it's teaching them to work in small group environments with tasers and other equipment. So there was no hand-to-hand training, no use of force training, and it wasn't contrary to our current policy.
And I just want to follow on that. Again, I want you to picture what we're trying to address here. If a fight's breaking out, if there may be a danger to an officer or to an inmate, we want to stop that immediately. And a taser is an effective way to do that and a safe way to do that. And it's going to be, as you heard, under very rigorous conditions. But to think that we had a tool we weren't using and that might allow violence to deepen in any given instance, again, I'm looking at this from a very human scale. If someone's in danger, I want that situation shut down immediately. The taser can help us do that, then I want that taser there. It's as simple as that.
Can you say about the DOI investigation into the contract?
I don't know about the DOI investigation of the contract.
I'm not aware they're investigating the contract. If they are, you'd have to talk to DOI.
Talk to them, yeah.
I've got 3.
Okay, wait. Everyone's doing a lot of questions. I'd like to get around, so try 1 or 2 and we'll come back around.
3 hours.
Come on, I want to give everyone a chance. It's a democracy. Go ahead.
Okay, so the first one is, I don't see other ones, are correction officers going to go through these scanners or just inmates and visitors?
So the initial phase would be inmates and visitors. That's our approach.
This is a follow-up to that. Is there concern that contraband, I have from sources that the majority of contraband goes through officers?
We obviously have had cases where officers have had contraband on them coming into the jails. We've obviously prosecuted those cases and will continue to arrest and prosecute in those regards. I really believe, with 40-plus years of experience, that the majority of the contraband does not come in through our staff.
And so I'm going to hold you there a second. And I'll give you one more follow, but let me stay on this. So 40 years of experience. I believe Joe Pond, again, is one of the leading experts on correction and reform in the United States of America. He's turned around correction systems all over the country. He's saying something very specific. First cause, unfortunately, is visitors and other external personnel. That's why we had to change those approaches, the visitation policies, and obviously the presence of scanners will add to that. But if the question is, are there some bad apples? Are there some officers who have endangered their fellow officers, as well as inmates, by bringing in? Of course there have been some, and what you're seeing more and more is those individuals are being found and arrested. There's the scanners that have existed, plus new ones. There's the cameras. There's a lot of other work being done. And more, the people who are doing that to the people who are their colleagues, who are putting their lives in danger, are suffering the consequences, and very serious and real consequences.
For them not going through.
What's what?
What's the logic for not sending COs through these scanners?
We currently have a process in place now. I think if we were going to move to do something else, we probably would talk to the union to have them understand what the scanner is and what it does. Not saying that would never happen, but our intent is to look at what's coming in through the visitors channel from the outside.
Okay, you'll come back. I'll come back. Go ahead.
New union leadership and now new initiatives with tasers and whatnot. Is this seen as an opportunity to pass new things with Seabrook, like, against these initiatives?
This has nothing to do with the union leadership, with all due respect to the union. This is part of the next phase of reform that's already been started. Again, the 14-point plan, we've moved on very aggressively, but we're going to constantly look for new pieces that needed to be added. And I would hope that the union would see this as in the interests of the people who do the work here to protect them. But as I would say with any municipal union, I got a job to do, Joe's got a job to do. We're going to keep moving these things forward. We are happy to have a dialogue with the union about it. Yeah.
Can you please comment on the attack? Can you please comment on the attack of 3 correctional officers on August 6th and 7th?
What's the question specifically?
If you can make any comments in regards to that.
Look, I would say this. Anytime there's an attack on a correction officer, it's absolutely, obviously unacceptable and inappropriate. I feel that personally the same way as any attack on any one of our public servants, and it gives me even greater resolve that we're going to take additional measures to protect our officers. So I can understand that when an officer is attacked, it's deeply concerning to other officers. Thank God in those situations the officers are going to be okay, but it's very unsettling and it demands additional action. And that's why I'd say I've talked to officers who have been attacked. When you talk to them, it makes it very simple why we need things like tasers. Who has not gone yet? You have not gone yet.
This is a question for the commissioner. Just want to hear a little bit more about, excuse me, the outfit that's conducting the training. As far as I understand it, this is U.S. CSOG. You had a prior relationship with them in Maine, as far as I understand, but what can you tell us about Joseph Garcia, the guy that runs it? Does he have any background in corrections, law enforcement, or military?
Right, so the contracting both here in Maine and here in New York City is a process we go through. It was a process that went through in Maine and, again, a process here in New York City. So he does have a background in training in small groups, and that's the training that we were looking for.
Do you have any corrections?
Again, I'm going to cut you off with all due respect. I appreciate your propagandistic newspaper, but the bottom line point is, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to, I'm not playing this game. We have very strenuous standards. When we give a contract, there's lots of checks and balances. I assure you, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. Have a nice day.
Correction.
Your colleague behind you, go ahead.
I just wanted to touch base on the punitive segregation and removal of it for teenagers, where you stand. It's been delayed a few times. Where you
No, the teenagers, the part for juveniles has been achieved. For everyone else, that's about to happen. Commissioner, talk about the timeline.
So, we're going down a path here of a model that doesn't exist in the country anywhere. Ending punitive SEG for adults 18 to 21 years old doesn't exist anywhere in the country. No one's talking about it. No one is trying it. So as we've gone into an evolution here, if we're not going to have punitive SEG, then what do you have in its place to keep our staff safe and inmates safe from each other? So we've created a model. We've created secure units, which Warden Winley has in JRBC. We have a small number of inmates in there. We've been operating it for about 3 months, generally pretty successful. But we've also almost eliminated punitive SEG for that 19 to 21-year-old group. The 18-year-olds have already been eliminated a month early. We currently have 2 inmates in the 19 to 21-year-old group in SEG today. So we've come a long ways. It's going to take a time for this model to evolve to we're all comfortable that it's safe and can do what we want it to do, which is keep our staff and inmates safe.
The biggest thing that correction officers have been saying is, for an inmate who is not put in punitive SEG, where do they go, and how is that safe for the correction officer?
So we have 3 things. We have second chance. We have True, which is a therapeutic model unit. And then we have the secure unit, which is the most heavily staffed and secure. Those are the 3 places that would go.
Yes.
Hi, yeah, so I know you mentioned that the scanners you all are getting now are the same ones used at the airport. What is the ideal scanner?
You can speak to it, but basically one that can see even more. But again, this one will be a substantial improvement over what exists currently at Rikers. You want?
So the ideal scanner, and we have them in place, we can't use them, is those that use x-rays. And x-rays can show just about anything, even if it's secreted in the body. That's the ideal. We cannot use in the state of New York.
And I emphasize we're going to work with the state to try and get those approved. Who has not gone? Yes, sir.
Do you have a dollar amount there on the cost of the scanners and these other equipment that's right now?
I don't have it in front of me, but we will get that to you today.
Secondly, is there a clear protocol in place on when the tasers will be used? Because it seems pretty vague, a violent incident.
No, the taser implementation starts this month.
Do you have like a clear protocol?
We have a policy. We have a written policy on the tasers.
Can you tell me a little more about it?
I can probably get you a copy of the policy. I'm not going to be able to quote it standing here. So,
Give them maybe what's the spirit of it. Or...
right. So, I mean, basically, it's when it's appropriate to use a taser, in what environments and what environments that would not be appropriate to use a taser. We don't use tasers on 16 to 17-year-olds, but in MOs, mentally ill inmates would be fairly restricted. Female inmates pregnant. So it gives you outlines on what circumstances it would be appropriate and those that it would not be.
And just to clarify, I'll ask the question to add to the dialogue. Anybody who would actually use a taser, any officer will be trained in those protocols.
Right. Only a captain can use a taser, so yes, it's a small number.
Okay, anyone who's not gone? Yep.
How many tasers is the department using?
How many tasers total? Do we know that? We may need a lifeline on this one. Do we have a total number? 20? 20. Okay, everyone who's gone the first time. Okay.
I'm gonna ask my questions all in one, you guys answer what you want.
That's harder sometimes. Try me.
Okay. 1, so the island population, inmate population is in the 7,000s now, right, the lowest in decades. Why? Yeah, it's interesting. When you email, what's the population of Rikers? People email back to total POs is probably 10. But the actual on-island
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. Right.
Right.
You're right. We're all used to the overall, and also it fluctuates by month substantially. So go ahead.
So that's like the lowest in decades, right? So what's the ratio of COs? Why do we need a big, boost of the CO staff? And will that be matched by, will that staffing boost be matched by the social worker, doctor? Are you increasing other staff? Is my first question.
Okay, stay there. It's a big question.
So the answer is yes. And the driving of staff in any correctional system, and we're high in New York City, is the physical plant. It's the buildings we have to work in. As we've added programs, education, recreation, all those things require more uniformed staff, but we've also added clinical staff. We've added counselors who work in the housing units with the inmates. So we have added other staff, but the physical plant really drives the cost of corrections, and most of these buildings are well past their lifespans.
2 or 3. Did McKinsey
I don't understand the question. Did they?
There's a contract with McKinsey, right, for
Right.
the anti-violence plan consulting. Did they recommend this purchase of the taser?
No, McKinsey has no corrections people in the group, so they help us do management planning, strategic planning, and those kinds of things.
Okay, you're running out of time. Next, Courtney.
To the scanners, are they walk-through scanners or are they bag scanners? And you said that it's X-ray that's the difference, but so you can't use X-rays. What exactly are?
They're the exact same machine used at the airport. So if you went into the airport today and you had to put your hands up, it's the exact same machine, yes.
This, like the new one.
So wait, just to clarify, make sure we're on the same page. The ones we're going to right away versus the ones we'd ideally like to go to.
Correct.
Which matches the hands up?
The ones that are currently in the airport are the ones we're going to get here now.
In the airports for you.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, we're reduced to putting our hands up, yes. The new ones, like those.
And you
Right.
can stand in different positions, which gives us more view. So we went down Monday
to the
to look at, we went down Monday to actually look at the machines and had them demonstrate different ways where we could see better in the sense of contraband on the body. So they demonstrated the machines.
Yes.
Will these machines reduce the number of strip searches or other invasive searches, or is this in addition to that?
I think it's be real helpful. We don't do strip searches, we do pat searches, but we think it will be real helpful.
Reduce pat searches?
I think it will, yes.
Way to the back.
It won't eliminate the need, but I think it will.
These scanners can't see inside the body.
No. They cannot see inside the body.
Okay, yes.
Do you have buy-in from the correction officers about the tasers? The union has already responded to the announcement saying they are against the use of tasers for their officers.
Wait, I'm sorry, you're saying it's captain level, right? Captain level?
Captain DSU
You're saying the
officers.
captain's union or the correction officers union? This is for captains who will be using it.
Officers are still going to be around the taser.
Yeah, but I want to just make sure in your reporting you indicate that the people who are using the tasers are the captains.
We already reported it. We broke it 3 hours ago.
Well done.
But do you have buy-in from the officers?
I believe all the officers that have been trained with the tasers have bought into the fact that it will be helpful in their deployment inside these buildings.
And again, we respect each union, but we are not going to stop something that will create a safer environment. You know what I'm saying? I just want to be very, very clear about this. We believe tasers will create a safer environment and they will protect officers. That's why we're doing it. Yes, sir.
I got two questions. The first one is, there's been 40,000
Just a little louder, please.
There's been 40,000 missed medical appointments over the last 4 months. Is there concern that, that this is a problem in the department?
40,000 missed medical appointments.
I'm not aware of the actual number. The issue with missed medical appointments is the recording of them. So if an inmate's in court, it gets classified as a miss. So we're trying to get the data where it's more useful for us. So those inmates who would not have been able to be produced because they're in court will show up as a miss. And also to be able to manage that day by day. So we know everybody on any given day that missed and make sure they get there the next day. So it is a concern to me. And we're working with H&H to make sure that those numbers get to zero.
And just to follow on the statistics, there's cases where officers have blood on their hands. There's cases where that was adjusted 6 months, a day before the fiscal year was up.
Wait, I literally can't follow how you put those pieces together.
Cases, we reported.
Try and, for those of us who don't know all that you know, please explain what you're talking about.
We did a story, I don't know if you read it, we did a story, there was 11 cases that we cited, including one with an officer, a captain who had blood on his hands, another one that
What
was...
does that, you're not saying that figuratively, you're saying that literally, what does that mean?
A picture from the department in an internal report with a captain and who had blood on his hands, and it was ruled as a logbook entry as a non-violent incident. And I'm just understand, why it was actually initially ruled as a violent incident and then later on downgraded. I'm just understand, why are these, an incident like that?
As you know, we've offered to sit down with you and anybody else who wants to be in the room and look at incident by incident. I did do that. Can I finish? I did do that, and I'm confident that the incidents that you submitted and the ones I looked at were all appropriate. Now, when an incident occurs in a building, that we have no control. So there's no command staff control that. That gets reported centrally. That gets generated in a report. So it's automatically a record. You can upgrade it, downgrade it, do whatever you want with it. It's automatically a record. At the end of the day, if we somehow wanted to make ourselves look good, the small number of cases, either upgrades or downgrade, would really have no impact on the overall system of violence. So, and as the mayor said, we're not in a good place now. We got a lot more work to do. We're committed to do that hard work. But anytime we want to go over and sit through cases, I'm confident that we're doing good reviews. I look at them. I get all the video. I look at the video. It would be very difficult for somebody to manipulate the numbers, as you stated they do.
Two more questions. Go ahead.
Commissioner, you were asked about the training before. You said there's been no use of force training, but the contract doesn't include that component. Does that mean that it just hasn't happened yet, or
There's no the use of force training hand-to-hand. So obviously non-lethal is force, tasers is force, using tactics on how to come into a cell block is force, but no hand-to-hand. So we train in a new policy on tactics, on hand-to-hand tactics. Garcia did not do that.
And I don't understand why you're asking about the experience of the trainer.
Just again, we're not revisiting. If someone wants to ask a pertinent question, Gloria, just not talking about, dude. Gloria.
It's ridiculous.
Mr. Mayor, can you talk about, like the commissioner, ending the use of solitary for the young adults? It keeps getting pushed back. The Board of Corrections keeps approving it. Can you give us an update on that and why do you need to?
Again, I want to respectfully challenge the premise. The end of punitive segregation for the first group, which was the juveniles, happened. As the commissioner said, the second group is shortly about to be completed. There's been an ongoing effort with the monitor to work through these issues, and an important look. Any big transition, any big reform has to be done in the context of safety and making sure that the reform will be sustainable. But there's absolute commitment to finishing it and reaching that next group of people, and that will be done in the coming next few months.
And we can look at any system in the country. We're far ahead of anybody. Nobody's even attempting to do the things that we're currently doing here in New York City. So it's taken time. We're designing something that's never been designed before.
All right, thanks everyone.